Привет из Дубая. С вами передача «ГолубьМира», где разбираем крутые навыки. Спрашиваем на английском, отвечаем на русском. Подтягивайте язык или смотрите перевод в тайм-кодах. Let's talk about evolutionary theory and let's start with the definition.
It was a long time ago when people started to think how their life was created on the earth, and there were people which was called like creationists. These people think that someone like a great force or omnipotent God was creating everything which is life on the earth, on the planet. But there is another stream of science thinking, and they think that there is an evolutionary theory. And the very first man who was writing a very loud article about this, it was Charles Darwin. He has been to Galapagos Island. He found some birds. The Russian name is Yurki. I don't know how to say it in English. And they were having different bike, клюв.
Yes, Spike.
Bike, they were having different bike, and this was the reason of their food. Some of them were eating fish, some of them were eating flowers, some of them were trying to get another kind of food, and this species were using different techniques, and this lead them to be slightly different. And when Charles Darwin was on the science expedition, he drew a lot of these birds and write this article. But to be honest, when we say about Charles Darwin, we often say that he named this like evolutionary theory. It is not the true. Charles was thinking about this, but if we will count how many he was using word of God in this article, it would be rise a great number.
And when it comes to the theory itself, obviously it might be like a covering different areas of life. So what might be the essence of it? And maybe we probably could start with the steps or like a stages that like any creature or maybe like a group of creatures or maybe type of the objects that could be associated with the creatures could take on their way from the beginning to the end, and whether it's cyclic.
When we start to think how our planet appear, and we trying to use theory of a great explosion, is it okay to say теория большого взрыва, theory of great explosion?
Big Bang Theory.
Big Bang Theory, yes, thank you. And we know that it was happening several billions years ago, but no one knows what was right before this Big Bang. So yes, we know when it started, and we know maybe like from 4 seconds, четвертой секунды, from 4 seconds we know what was that happening. But the same we have with life. Probably life was planted on the Earth by some meteorite or maybe some asteroid or some other space body, and this is very strange to think about, because we couldn't imagine that there is a life could exist except on Earth. We have been searching for many years with different tools, but we couldn't find any track of the life in the universe. But anyway, right now there is a very funny thing happen. Scientists discover on the moon a lot of creatures which was originally from the Earth. The name of them is тихоходки. I don't know how to translate this. These small creatures, they, for example, live in our pillows. They could stand in any temperatures. They could survive even after radiation. So we, as people, we were sending some zones, some moon walkers on the surface of our satellite, and we planned already life. The same situation could be even with us. There were some warm pond, and in this pond was dropping some stone from the universe, and on this stone was some very simple form of life. Then this life were joining all together, dividing, and all the creatures became from one point. And there is also one more evidence which could be used in help to prove evolutionary theory. If we'll use your DNK or my DNA, in our DNA, we could find a lot of different creatures. For example, in your DNA, we could find Rina, and in my DNA, we could find some kind of dinosaurs' DNA. So we are like an encyclopedia of DNA of all creatures we were forming from.
Well, which is actually an interesting point because at a certain point of time, I do remember having a conversation with some of my friends, and what we kind of agreed on that like whatever we see on Earth is not really fresh because at a certain point of time it was something before and before. So it literally like nothing is fresh. It's just like changing its shape and form and maybe like the state of it as well. And when it comes to evolutionary theory, obviously like everything is progressing, but like how it works, like what might be the conditions for something to progress and what are the rules they follow, or maybe it's like the entropy or chaos, and they just like trying different variations of the undefined set to see like in which path they potentially could progress and move towards to, and then repeat it over again. And probably I would remember something that you were saying at the algorithm scale when we were looking at how the knight, the horse, could move, like how exactly make the moves and whether it will be falling back.
No, to be honest, there are a lot of people who stand against the evolutionary theory, and they say, why now monkeys do not become a man? Why men do not become another kind or another species? But there is very funny things. For example, if you will take all the dogs which exist, all of them has the same predecessor. Predecessor is okay?
Ancestor or
An
predecessor.
predecessor, but this predecessor is already extinguished, вымер.
That's correct.
Extinguished. So there is no such a wolf on the planet that could be converted in the dogs. The same with men. There were like 5 group of men. Some of them were Cro-Magnon, some of them were Neanderthal, and some of them were like Homo erectus and so on. And they all die in the fight. And we are just only one branch which create human species, and they could not be converted from gorillas or from orangutan. So when we start to think if it is possible that we will make some kind of evolution, yes, it indeed. For example, for last 150 years, we became taller and we have much more fat because we eat a lot. The same would happen with our even cats. Cats several thousand years ago were quite a small creatures because they were trying to hunt and they were not living on the streets close to the garbage cans and close to the people with dog pet of pet food. The same could be also monitored in some other stages. For example, when we take some creatures who live not a long life, like hamsters, like some fishes, like some birds. If you will able to have several generations, like 20 or 30 during your life, you could convert hamster in quite a different creatures. For example, there is a very strange thing. When you will think about chickens, I don't know how to say, but there is a mind meat chicken broiler. Is it the same word in English?
It might be a slightly different word, but in general, they're all chickens.
Okay, but if you will see the meat chicken, it has a weight like 3 times more than usual chicken. And this chicken was created exactly by the people. And by the way, this meat chicken, they couldn't produce themselves. So they'll need help of man. The same with some kind of, I don't know how to say, bulldogs and mops. Some of them could not be having babies without help of the man.
And since we started speaking about the cycles of the development, like for example, there might be different species or types of the species who were living on the earth, I do believe like maybe for hundreds or thousands of years. I'm speaking about insects. It seems that they actually burn and die like relatively fast, and they've been here like for a lot of like times, but this probably, at least like in our perspective as a human perspective, they were not evolving that much because based on probably some descriptions that they have, like nothing changed. So whether it's their immutability, so it's just like the whole still, or maybe for us as a human, we live like we were there on such a short period of time, so we don't really even notice the change of some species that were like going through the cycles faster. So whether it's like the static or like dynamic thing for them.
It depends. For example, if we will talk about sharks or crocodiles, they live for a very long period. And some species, for example, I don't know how to say, but Islandskая akula, Iceland shark,
Shark, yes.
which lives in very cold water, could live for 5 or 6 100 years. And for this species, evolution is very slow. The same, for example, with elephant, they live like 80 years. The same with ravens, they could live up to 300 years. The same with turtles, they could live for 200 years. But if you talk about some butterflies or insect or mosquitoes, yes, they live not for a long time, but they were created quite well. You know, if you'll find, for example, carrot tree or carrot bush or like tomato bush from the Egyptian grave, you find that they were very tiny, these fruits or veggies. But suddenly people during several thousand years created a big one and tasty ones. The same with, for example, birds, the same with some fishes, but not with insects. Insects are well created and they're lucky to be the same for hundreds of million years.
And when it comes to using the evolutionary theory for, let's say, like our lives, probably, you know, like we may look or maybe in any like a dynamics between the people. So probably, yes, we know that everything is progressing well or maybe not progressing well, and then like it fell shortly, and then the next branch starts. So how we may find an application of this theory in our lives or for our lives?
We couldn't find it, but we should be ready. For example, if we will step on other planets and we will live on Mercury or Venus, we will have another gravitation, and maybe we will change our bodies because of it. The same could be also with astronauts, which they fly around Earth. There is several paradox about them, about timing and so on. The same with, for example, plants. Our cosmonauts and astronauts, they try to grow plants in the невесомости, in outer space, in
anti-gravity.
Anti-gravity, but they didn't success. For example, plants, they couldn't how they don't know how to put leaves, how to put roots, and they could not give something to eat. And it is very hard question, because we don't know how to grow food when we'll go or we'll live outside of the earth. So in a very short period we will find that something which was not eatable on the earth would be quite eatable on other planets, because we have not so many choices. We will try chicken, we will try, I don't know, maybe some worms, we will try some bugs, but anyway we will find something. And if we will change gravity, if we will change amount of air, if we will change our food, definitely in a short period you will see that we will become or slim, or we will be fat, we will maybe have some long arm, or maybe our brain will change. By the way, people who play games too much, they have special, I don't know how to say this, special как бы желобок.
Yeah, probably it's like a embossing.
Sorry,
Yes.
like embossing on the head. And probably after several generation, we all have our head to be divided on two parts, and exactly on the place where we put our earphones.
And there is another joke like saying that probably in couple of like centuries, if we don't invent anything rather than mobile phone, we all will be bended so that we could look at the displays of the phone, and we probably just will need one big thumb and nothing else as well. And by the way, this was also nice segue explaining how evolutionary theory could help to make the world a better place. А мы рассмотрели навык теория эволюции и как он полезен именно вам. Всем мира!